Welcome to Lake Cumberland Amateur Radio Association. You can find us at LCARA.net, on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Instagram. If you're enjoying the videos we're producing here at LCARA, please help our club out by hitting that subscribe button. Also, give us some feedback on our videos. Click the like button, share with anybody who may find it interesting, and be sure to hit the bell icon to make sure you get notified of the next video release. Hello, folks. This is Chris, KY4CKP, and finally had some fairly decent weather and found a good location to do an outside test of the DriveON antenna mount project that we had previewed a while back and been working on. And of course, being wintertime, especially here in Kentucky, then immediately the weather kind of turned against us. So had some fairly decent weather, and again, a good location. And so we'll see the testing of this antenna mount here a little bit later in the video. But I just wanted to introduce this a little bit and go over the build process. There was a couple things I wanted to do for this project. One was keep it relatively inexpensive. You can look up DriveON antenna mount systems. There's some really nice, welded structures, tip-up, structures and things. And those are, some pretty nice kits out there. But they range from the low end of $80, $90 up to at least one of them is $330. And again, pretty nice kits. But this is a good candidate, at least I felt, for a do-it-yourself project. And I had some ideas in mind. I've seen some pictures and videos of what other folks have done. And I had a few components laying around the house. You may or may not have any of those, some wood and some things. But they're also not very expensive to if you have to go out and buy those components. And the other components I went for were not terribly expensive either. So we're going to kind of go over and show the build process first, and then we'll get into and show the testing of this here a little bit later in the video. So we'll start talking about the components here in just a moment. All right, so here we're just showing a quick pan of some of the components that I assembled for this project. Some galvanized steel pipe, galvanized floor flange, some plywood, some concrete float poles that use to smooth out concrete. Those are aluminum, so they're not going to rust, and they're also lightweight. So I started out, I had a piece of plywood. If you needed to go buy a 2 by 2 foot piece of project plywood and cut it down, and I may cut this down, it's pretty close to what I wanted. And I just took the floor flange, marked out the holes and everything so I could drill the holes out. And as we'll see, that was simple enough. I got some stainless steel hardware to use to mount that. This is not water pressure treated plywood. You could certainly use that. I'm probably just going to paint this up in some things, and I don't really plan on leaving it out in severe weather. But it would also be easy to rebuild this if it got rotted or severely messed up due to weather over time. So here you can see we just drilled the holes, mounted the floor flange. Um, Also a tip, I also put some grease on the threads for the pipe and the floor flange just to make that easier to deal with over time as well. And there's I think it's an 18 inch, I forget if I got either 18 inch or 24-inch piece of galvanized pipe just to sort of be the base of the antenna. Now, I kind of got lucky. These particular poles, these are 6-foot poles. I decided to go with longer poles and fewer of them as opposed to there's all kinds of different military surplus, shorter poles for things. I think usually in the 4-foot range, but you would have more of them. And just when it comes to transport and storage, I decided to go this route. And they're easy replaceable, and they're not too expensive. I think they're around $18 at Lowe's or Home Depot or someplace. Um, so here you can see again a little bit of the heavy grease I put on there just to make screwing and unscrewing that easier. And just watch out a little bit. It's not going to be necessarily something that would be a huge mess or anything, and easy to reapply just a little bit of that from time to time. So we got the floor flange mounted. We got the plywood. Again, if you specifically want to start out with some pressure treated plywood, hey, no, certainly no problem with that. I just had this piece and it was pretty close to what I wanted, and just reduced the time and number of cuts I was going to have to make. So, and I may cut it down a little bit. It's really a little bit bigger than I need. But again, it was laying around, so I had that. And this black piece that you see on here is sort of my stopper. Uh, Again, it was a piece of what I had laying around from an old computer desk. It actually was the the wrist rest part, and again, I had it in a bin, And it's one of those things. Well, I might use that again someday. And so sure enough, I'm like, oh, well, that's kind of the right shape and size, and I'll just use that for the little backstop for the DriveON. You could go buy a piece of 1x2 or 2x2 or something and do the very same thing for that. So free or not very expensive for that part. Again, just showing the construction. And here you can see the basic construction of this. Now I haven't painted it or done anything to it. I'll probably, I don't know, paint it black or I don't know something, and maybe make it a little bit more weatherproof or something. But this is the basic construction right here, showing the pipe screwed into the floor flange, and that's screwed to the base. I think that's 3/4 inch plywood, a half inch or 3/4 inch, 5/8, whatever they sell plywood. So plenty heavy duty. Of course, it's going to be on the ground, so not going to matter a ton. But 1/4 inch plywood may have enough give if there's wind. That was something with this in the wind, and there was some wind as you'll see in the testing part. And these poles are strong. Had no problem. Had no problem with the wind or anything. Now, when it comes to the poles, I got kind of lucky. The top of that flange, the flared part, pretty much fits into these poles, and that's pretty well accidental. These are just the components I was looking at, but it kind of slips over there, and then towards the top of this, 18 or 24 inch section of galvanized pipe. Oh, you can see it right there, 18 inch. Okay. At the top of this, um, I just thought, well, let me just take some tape, and I'll just start wrapping it around. I'll build it up, and I'll check it, frequently, and I'll get it to where that's a decent fit for the pipe. And that's exactly what I did. I started putting wraps around with some Gorilla Tape, duct tape, whatever you've got on hand, and I think it's the 2 inch roll, and I got a good fit. And so when you slip the big long 6 foot pipes over this, they fit on the bottom well. They fit this well. They can slide on and off, but it's a good fit. They're not going to wobble around a whole bunch. And there you can see just a bigger picture of that. Super simple solution to that problem. And again, you're not going to have a bunch of lean or wobble with your setup once you've got it deployed in the field. Now, if your particular set of hardware doesn't work out maybe quite that nicely, I could have put a second, wrapping of tape towards the bottom of the galvanized pipe. Again, I just kind of got lucky that these aluminum 6 foot pipes fit over that you know, the bottom part of the floor flange, and they already kind of fit over that pretty nicely. So I didn't have to. But there towards the bottom, you could put a second wrapping of tape to give make sure the bottom wasn't going to, rattle around or allow it to lean or anything. It doesn't appear that I need to do that right now. If I change my mind, it's super easy to add some more tape in the future, just like I did there towards the top. Again, none of this is very expensive. None of this is very heavy or hard to pack, right? It all breaks down pretty nicely, and you can easily put it in a car or a vehicle. Again, just kind of showing that. This is with one of the pipes just sitting on there. And again, it tends to slip down onto the flared part of that floor flange all the way down pretty nicely. And then with that tape at the top, it's a pretty stable fit. Again, I had it out, and I don't know. It was probably at least 15 or 20 mile per hour wind gusts happening that day. Not completely constant, but very gusty, and seemed very stable. Wasn't a problem at all. Of course, by the time you drive a vehicle up on that, the base is going to be nice and stable. I use some nice big washers with the floor flange and everything. Make sure there's plenty of stuff there. It's not just the screws into the wood. There's some nice big washers and things to make sure it's nice and strong and stable. And then here's just kind of a close-up of the pipes I was using. Now these are common. You can find these pretty easily. QLT by Marshalltown aluminum pipes. They're swaged at the top, so they are interlocking, and they've got you can kind of see peeking in there on the left, the little push button locks. They're strong. They're heavy duty. They're lightweight. They're aluminum. They're not really going to rust. They're about $18 a piece. Now, there's probably cheaper poles you could get. You could work something up with a chain link fence, top rail or something. I went with these because they're pretty strong. They have enough diameter, and the metal's heavy enough. They weren't really bending. Again, it was a really good test with the wind that day. A little bit thicker diameter maybe, but they're not that heavy, not going to rust. So I just felt they worked out good for this project. If I want a fourth one, I think I could easily add a fourth one to this little setup, and it would still work just fine. So just kind of showing a single pole. Here's where I was going to do some testing, and then immediately it started to rain. I was finishing this up 2 or 3 weeks ago, and went outside. And I thought I'll just kind of temporarily set this up and do maybe some quick testing or something. And it immediately started to rain, and I had to wait a little while for a better day to get out there. But it just kind of shows, with one 6 foot section of pole. And when we get to the testing here a little bit later, we did testing with the mag mount antenna on my car, and then one 6 foot segment, two 6 foot segments, and three 6 foot segments with a little 3 element Yagi, and hitting a 2 meter repeater about 60 or 65 miles away. And you'll be able to tell it does make a big difference. Right now, here's just showing all three poles that I had just temporarily set up again right as it started to rain, and we'll see another look at that. All right, folks. So I checked in, and KY4BDP Brian did hear me on the repeater as well as AC4DM Dawn, and I did barely hear them come back. I was pretty scratchy for them, and generally the reverse was true. So this should be a good test. I'm barely getting into the repeater. So here's the three poles I'm going to be using and the little Yagi antenna, and pretty simple system. A lot of you probably know these drive-ins. We probably got some wind noise, so I apologize for that. But I've got my little DriveON mount, and I'm just going to screw the pole into the floor flange, and I can slip the riser poles right above that, and we'll try 6, 12, and 18 feet with the Yagi antenna, and we'll see if that makes a difference. So I'll put up the first segment, and we'll bring you folks right back. So here we are, folks. Our first test is with one of the 6 foot pole sections, mounted the 3 element Yagi on there. And this is probably, 6 inches, within 6 inches, ultimately of where the mag mount on the car roof is, but a directional Yagi antenna versus an omnidirectional vertical mount. And this will be our first test. And so we'll see how that goes here in this next clip. All right, folks, so I was checking with KY4BDP. We have one segment of pole up. So the Yagi's at about 6 feet. It is vertically polarized, vertically oriented. Of course, our vertical antenna at the repeater side is vertical. He said he heard me. I opened the repeater. Still low volume, a bit scratchy. Fairly similar to using the vertical mag mount on my vehicle, which is about what I expected potentially in this terrain, and only 6 feet off the ground. My vertical's 6, maybe 7 feet off the ground. So we're going to set up, put in the second segment of pole that'll get us up closer to 12 feet off the ground. We'll try that one, and then of course we'll eventually try 3 poles approximately 18 feet off the ground, and see if those varying heights coupled with this directional Yagi may help things a little bit. So we'll get it set up for test number 2 using 2 poles approximately 12 feet off the ground, and then we'll bring you folks right back. All right, folks, as you can see, we've now added the second pole. So we're up close to 12 feet off the ground, and we'll give this a shot, see if this improves our access to the repeater. All right, folks, and we're back. So we've got 2 segments of our poles up, so that gets us up around 12 feet, probably just a little bit under that because there is some overlap of the poles, the way they connect together. And again, these poles, and I'll link to them below, these are actually used for concrete floats. So if you do concrete work and you've got what they call the float, you're going to smooth out the surface of the concrete. These are extension poles you can use for those 6 foot segments, so you can buy as many as you might need, put them together in different combinations. But the thing I liked about them, they're aluminum. There's nothing really to rust on them, and they're lightweight. So I think they'll work out well for this. Now, I know that you can get the military-style surplus poles, which are really used for things like, excuse me, for putting up tents and awnings and different things. And there's fiberglass and aluminum versions of those. I think typically in a 4 foot segments, and you can get multiple segments of those, and they can work pretty well. But to me, you have to decide which you might want more. Do you want longer poles, but you'll have fewer of them? So as far as storing and transporting, the volume of space of simply how many poles you're going to bundle together will be less. 3 poles, and I've got 18 feet. If you're doing 4 foot poles, you'd have to have, 4 to 5 poles of a similar diameter, probably a little bit narrower maybe, but you'd have 4 or 5 poles. So shorter
but a bigger diameter of volume to bundle and store, or longer and less of that. And I decided to go with longer and a smaller diameter or circumference to mount to things or to store. Again, they're aluminum, they're lightweight, they're not really going to rust, so should last pretty decently. So we're going to try it now with again about 12 feet off the ground, and see if that makes any difference in reaching the repeater from this particular location. Again, this is right on the edge, which is why I chose this location. And again, we're somewhere maybe 60 or 65 miles as the crow flies to the repeater. So it's a pretty good distance with some hills in the middle. Certainly for 2 meters, doable in the right conditions, but a pretty good test, I think. So we're going to try that test, and we'll bring you folks right back. All right, folks, we're right back. We're going to go ahead and give a call and see if KY4BDP is hearing me any better. He's actually been hearing me. I haven't always heard the replies from either he or AC4DM. I did hear them a little bit earlier with just the mag mount antenna. But let's see if things are any better this time. KY4CKP calling KY4BDP. We got the repeater call sign back. That's a good sign. So we know we unlocked the repeater. A little bit scratchy.
KY4BDP.
I think that might have been AC4DM. KY4CKP here. Sounds like I'm getting to the repeater a little better, at least from my end. I heard the repeater announce itself, and I just heard somebody, might have been AC4DM, come back. Wasn't catching very much of that early on. So I've got 2 segments of pole for this DriveON antenna mount, and I'm up about 12 feet. And we'll be trying a third test here in a few minutes with 3 poles, and that'll be about 18 feet.
Understand. On drive up pole, and you're going up to about 18 feet. AC40.
Roger. And you came through a little better that time, Don. A little scratchy, but I was able to copy your reply that time. So I think it's definitely working a little bit better for me. I've got that little 3-element Yagi antenna vertically oriented, so that's what I'm using for the test. So we'll set up for the third segment, and we'll give you folks a holler back here in just a couple more minutes. KY4CKP, portable.
All right, very good. Be waiting on you there, AC40.
All right, so we're getting through now, and it's, again, still a bit scratchy, but before we went up to 12 feet at this location, they were hearing me scratchy. I wasn't hearing the repeater unlock. I wasn't hearing them briefly with the mag mount on top of the car itself. So I would say that, yes, this is helping. We've got a little more height now, and we're using that directional antenna, the Yagi. So very curious, and we'll find out here in a couple of minutes, are we going to get any more performance out of this by adding in the third segment. So we'll set up for that, and then we'll bring you folks right back. All right, folks, here we are. We are all set up. We've got 3 segments of the poles all the way up to about 18 feet, fairly close to it, 17 feet at least. Put an extension on the cable using a barrel connector, and we're going to give this a shot, see if we can get into that repeater a little bit better. So we'll bring it right back. All right, folks, we're back. We've got our 3 segments of poles up. We're going to try another test to the repeater. So now we're up at least 17 feet, probably something close to that, with the little 3-element Yagi, and we'll try accessing the repeater, see if things are any better. It already seems to me like it has gotten better. Again, this is a pretty good haul for 2 meters, 65 miles, with hills in the way. Central Kentucky, where we are, verging on eastern Kentucky, still has some hills from the Appalachian Mountains, so it's not just a super flat area. So pretty good haul, I think. Let's see if we can get in contact with KY4BDP or AC4DM. KY4CKP, testing repeater access for AC4DM or KY4BDP.
KY4CKP, AC40M.
All All right, well, I've got 3 segments of poles up right now, 17, 18 feet in the air. You were definitely coming in a lot clearer for me, Don. How am I sounding on your end?
Well, as you're going up, Chris, as you're going up, the noise on your signal is getting less, so you have less noise on you than you did before. Go ahead.
All right, good deal, good deal. Like I say, you're a whole lot clearer. It's not cutting in and out quite as much or nearly as scratchy. So I think this is a success. 6 feet, I think you all could hear me. I wasn't hearing you very much. 12, it got better, and then here at 18, it's definitely better. And so for field operations, I think this could definitely be of value to reach those more distant repeaters.
Roger on that, yeah, like I said, of course, there where you're at and everything, I don't know, what's between you and here and so forth, but you definitely increased your audio considerably, and the static on your signal is not near as bad as it was. Go ahead.
Yeah, and like I say, same thing receiving you on this end as well. So I think we've got a good test here. I'm going to go ahead and kind of wrap things up and pack it away, head back to the compound. Thanks for being available to test for me today, and this should be our video coming out this Friday.
Okay, very good there, Chris, and you have a good afternoon, and we'll talk to you later on. KY4CKP, AC4DM clear.
KY4CKP portable, I'll be clear for now. All right, got much better, much better. At 6 feet, they were hearing me. I wasn't really getting their returns very well, if at all. 12 feet, start hearing them. Scratchy, they're hearing me a little bit better. I'm hearing them a little bit better. Communications became possible, and that's a big part of what this is about. It's not just necessarily getting something to the point of perfect communications, although whenever we can tweak on things and work on things and achieve that, that's great. But if you were in the field, because this is highly transportable, if it would help you do an emergency communications or just reach some areas that you might not normally reach, whether it's a field day or you're just camping or something like that, this is easy to take with you, easy to build, not very expensive. It definitely helped. And when we put that third pole in there, got up around 17, 18 feet, major difference, major difference. So I'll take a picture of what I'm looking at in front of me so you can immediately see some hills and the barn that's right here. And all the way down the 60 or 65 miles to where the repeater is, it's flats and valleys and rivers and hills, and there's a lot going on between here and there. So I think this was a very good test to show how, we've always talked about you're out somewhere, you're doing POTA, SOTA, camping, whatever it is, field days, and it's just, you'll just throw an antenna up in a tree. There are some trees right here on this property, this park, but in some states, some locations, you're not allowed to put anything in any trees. In some places, you're not allowed to drive anything into the ground. I'm in a blacktop parking lot. I could put this up anywhere and have my tree portable with me and be able to get some elevation, and it's relatively heavy duty. This little Yagi doesn't weigh a lot. It's fairly windy today, and that's a little bit noticeable, but it'll certainly hold any kind of wire antennas, dipole, link dipole antennas, small Yagis and different things like that, small verticals, to probably mid-size, to be honest. So I think that'll wrap this one up. I think we have a success. We'll link some details in the description below. I think that's it. This is Chris, KY4CKP, for Lake Cumberland Amateur Radio Association, 73.